This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
This is Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are Jason McGuire with New York Families and Dan Bartkowiak at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Let's jump right in. Jason, another budget extender. I think that we're up to 14 now, and the New York State budget is now officially over 50 days late. Have you ever seen so much dysfunction when it comes to the budget in New York in your years of working there?
I do remember one budget that went well into the summer months, so it could be worse than it currently is, but not by much. There are 9 budget bills that have to be passed for the budget to be completed. And what's interesting is there is one bill that moved Wednesday this week, and when that bill passed, it was done through a message of necessity. It did not offer any public input on what was in that bill. Now, legislators are coming back next week to pass more bills. They could have just as easily passed it next week, but for whatever reason, there was a need to pass it before anybody could see what was in it.
Yeah, I know Governor and the legislative leaders are not making a lot of friends in Albany these days. They want to get out of Dodge by June 4th. Not sure they're going to make it. This week in Pennsylvania, a big challenge to that awful ruling that happened last month. The Commonwealth Court finding somewhere in the state constitution a right to what they call reproductive autonomy. Not sure what that means. Dan, the Attorney General Dave Sunday is challenging this ruling. What happens next in this court battle over taxpayer-funded abortions?
Yeah, and this is certainly an important case to watch. I appreciate our Attorney General. The responsibility of our Attorney General is to defend current laws, and Dave Sunday has taken on the defense of this case, and it's a position that the state holds that there's no taxpayer funding of abortion. And frankly, look at the abortion industry. The abortion industry continues to put profits over patients, looking to harm women, and so I'm thankful that there are officials like Dave Sunday taking on the challenge of the abortion industry and trying to protect taxpayers from paying for abortions.
Jason, if President Trump was a baseball player, he'd be batting 1,000 right now. In the GOP primaries, at least, all of his endorsed candidates have emerged victorious. New York's primary isn't until next month. But in your opinion, would it be wise or foolish for Republican candidates to hitch their wagon to President Trump?
Well, I think it depends on the district. There are districts where it would be very helpful, and there are districts that are a little more challenging, that maybe are a little blue-leaning or very difficult for a Republican to hold. And yet we see the president coming to Suffern, New York, to speak alongside Representative Mike Lawler today, making comments there in what is a very difficult district. And so Mr. Lawler must see something in that district that indicates that the president's presence in that area will help him in his reelection effort.
Yeah. Whether to run to or run from the Trump agenda. In Pennsylvania, all of his candidates won back on Tuesday, Dan. I thought it was interesting. The gambling lobbies poured a lot of money into 3 GOP races in particular, $8 million, and in all 3 of those races they lost. What does that say about gambling in Pennsylvania?
Well, I think it's a reminder of gambling and really these addiction-for-profit industries in our state. You know, I think of over at the Capitol, the marijuana industry. The number of lobbyists at the Capitol have certainly increased. And when you have this election that just happened, the 3 Senate primaries, $8 million+ that were poured into specifically Senate races, you just saw the inundation of this gambling industry that was trying to get their way. And what I'm thankful for, at least in those states, many got frustrated. You certainly saw so many of the ads, but still many went out to the polls and did their duty of going to vote. And so I'm thankful that many made their voices heard, despite the noise, despite the special interests, and it's a reminder really of what is needed come general election too.
Well, Jason, in a couple of months, the era of doctor-assisted suicide will become a reality in New York State. I think early August is when those suicides can begin. We've talked at length on this show about the dangers of this. It's now here. What concerns you the most when you think about this so-called Medical Aid in Dying Act? And how did we get to the point where state-sanctioned suicide suicide would become a reality in New York?
I think most immediately what concerns me is with assisted suicide, there's just a loss of hope. The first time you sit before a doctor and you hear the word cancer and you're giving a difficult prognosis, you assume the worst. And frankly, often doctors give a very stark scenario. And yet once you can get beyond those initial days, you begin to see there is a hope. Every day there are new treatments that are coming out. But with assisted suicide, you lose hope. You just see an easy exit. You see a way out of the pain and the fear of the moment. And I think that's what worries me about this particular initiative is how people are going to be grabbing onto that. And that's also partly how we got here. There is a fear of dying in our culture. We worship personal choice. And so we see people that are choosing the path of personal autonomy. It's my body, my choice, rather than submitting to what God's will is for a person's life. And as we move further and further away from a Christian worldview, we're going to adopt these ideologies that run contrary to the sanctity of human life.
Dan, I want to bring you in on this as well. I don't know if you saw the interview that Dr. Ben Sasse did on 60 Minutes recently. He is dying of pancreatic cancer, and barring a miracle, he won't live to see his 14-year-old son grow up. He won't get to walk his daughters down the aisle. But yet he's teaching the nation a very valuable lesson on dying with dignity. How does this worldview that Dr. Sasse espouses contradict those who push for doctor-assisted suicide in states like New York? Every
listener needs to search for those interviews of Ben Sasse if you haven't heard them already. And it's countercultural, exactly what Jason's talking about, really the loss of hope. As a believer in Christ, I think of the hymn In Christ Alone, as Jason was talking, no guilt in life, no fear in death. Ben Sasse is living that out, and it's amazing to see the witness that he's had, not running away from the Lord, not even running away from the spotlight that he's had. And he's stating the sovereign God, he wouldn't want someone that's simply just answering yes to all of his prayers. And just the realness that Ben Sasse is presenting in the midst of such a diagnosis, and how that can draw you closer to God, to need his presence, to need his truth in your life.
All right, then finally, guys, let's talk about school choice and why it matters so much. Jason, school budget votes happened earlier this week. I think 96% of districts approving their spending plans. But few states spend as much on public education as New York does. But studies have shown math and reading scores continue to plummet. How do we right this ship and make our schools more accountable with the tax dollars they receive?
Yeah, in New York, we're averaging about $37,000 per year per student. We have districts that are spending over $50,000 per student, and yet our reading and math scores are plummeting. I think what you have to do is introduce competition to the market. Right now, there is no competition in the public school market, or very little, I should say. And the teachers' unions, the education unions here in New York are trying to strangle that school choice initiative from happening. And so really, when we have things like the federal tax credit scholarship program that will open up better educational opportunities for more students, that may be the path to success for education in our state and the nation.
And that's a great segue to you, Dan. This week marks the 25th anniversary of the Educational Improvement Tax Credit Program in Pennsylvania. Why is this program worth protecting and expanding in the Keystone State?
Yeah, I remember I was standing at the Capitol for a school choice rally, and I remember a young student that had received an EITC scholarship standing up in front of a podium and saying how this saved my life. Really, school choice works, and I echo everything Jason's saying. Here in Pennsylvania, this EITC program, hundreds of thousands of scholarships have been given out over the last 25 years, and so many families have been helped. But also this past year, nearly 70,000 students were turned away from receiving that scholarship because there's a cap on the program. And so it highlights the desire for families looking for options. We absolutely here in Pennsylvania as well as in New York, the majority of students in public schools, they can't read. They're not at grade level for math and reading. And so I think if we just continue to do the same old what we've done before, and we shouldn't expect to see better results. And so obviously we need to introduce competition. We need those options, and families and students are asking for it. So the more we can do on that front, the better we can have for families.
All right, that'll be the last word this week, but a lot of places we went. If you have questions about any of the topics discussed on today's program, or you simply would like to learn more about the Pennsylvania Family Institute doing a great work in Harrisburg, Dan, where can folks find you online?
tafamily.org.
And stay informed on all the issues in Albany as well. Lots to discuss there. If folks want to learn more about New York families, Jason, where can they find you?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.